Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu wa sallama ala nabiyyil kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in amma ba'd. So we are moving along and we are on the following hadith. I don't know the numbers. Read up to, well, it's a whole page is Tarjumatul Bab. Are you reading from book or you're reading online?
I'm reading from the book.
Okay, yeah, read from the book. Let's see if it corresponds. Fadun.
Which one is it?
Oh, باب ما جاء في العلم وقول الله وقوله تعالى قل رب زدني علما. It's like the fifth or sixth hadith of the chapter.
Okay.
It's the fifth bab, maybe fourth bab, sixth bab.
ما جاء في علم.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. باب ما جاء في العلم وقوله تعالى وقل رب زدني علما. Okay.
Yeah, read it. Yeah,
القراءة
read.
القراءة والأرض على المحدث ورأى الحسن والثوري ومالك القراءة جائز، واحتج بعضهم في القراءة على العالم بحديث ذمام ابن ثعلب قال للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الله أمرك
Allah, that's like a question. Allahu amarak. Yes.
الله أمرك أن نصلي الصلوات قال نعم قال فهذه قراءة على النبي أخبر ذمام قومه بذلك فأجازوا، واحتج مالك بالسكي
Yeah, bisaki. Saki.
بالسكي يقرأ على القوم فيقولون أشهدنا أشهدنا فلان أشهدنا فلان،
Good.
ويقرأ ذلك قراءة عليهم، ويقرأ على المقري فيقول القارئ أقرأني فلان. Okay, أقرأني فلان. Keep on going.
Yeah, up until حدثنا.
حدثنا محمد بن السلام حدثنا محمد بن الحسن الواسطي عن عوف عن الحسن قال لا بأس بالقراءة على العالم، وأخبرنا محمد بن يوسف الفرابري وحدثنا محمد بن إسماعيل البخاري قال it's long. حدثنا عبيد الله بن موسى عن سفيان قال إذا قرئ على المحدث فلا بأس أن تقول
يقول.
Mine has تقول. Okay.
Oh, okay. يقول.
Okay. أن تقول حدثني قال وسمعت أبا عاصم يقول عن مالك وسفيان القراءة على العالم وقراءته سواء. Okay.
Good. Jazakallah khair. So this is a chapter. So you can see so far it's just a chapter, no hadith. Well, there are portions of hadith. So this is the entire contents of the chapters, the mu'allaqat reports. Haddathana at the bottom, that's where the hadith begins. So this chapter, now you read the version you have is the same as ours. Okay. There's another version, and I'll share it on the screen here. So if you see here, Babu ma ja'a fil ilmi wa qawli Allahi ta'ala wa qur rabbi zidni ilma. That's one bab. And then the next bab is Bab al-qira'ati wal-ardi al-muhaddithi. So in some manuscripts, there's two different babs here. So the first bab has no contents. So the first bab is Ma ja'a fil ilm wa qawli Allahi ta'ala wa qur rabbi zidni ilma. So what has come concerning knowledge and the statement of Allah, "O Allah, our Lord, increase me in knowledge." So in some manuscripts, this is a bab without any hadith. So this is, we talked about that, the hadith-less babs, like chapters without hadith. They're called bayad. They're white. Why does that happen? Because we think that Bukhari originally, when he wrote the book, he wrote all the chapter headings, and then he brought his hadith and he filled them. And over the course of his research, he started like filling them with hadith, and later he would add to them sometimes. So it was a work in progress. So in the end, the Sahih, sometimes some manuscripts have babs without hadith. So they're like hadithless chapters. So later people copied them, and sometimes what they do is they put them together. So this was put together. So now in most manuscripts, oh, sorry, it was put together like you can see here, باب ما جاء في العلم وقوله تعالى قل رب زدني علما القراءة والعرض على المحدث. That's the title. And then wara al Hasan. Or you can consider ma ja'a fil ilm, the title, and the rest is still contents. So it's not entirely clear. So in any way, in circulating manuscripts, these are the two ways. So this picture I got from one. I have a Turkish manuscript. Well, it's not Turkey, but it's published in Turkey, and this is how it appears: two different babs. And then the one you read and the one that's from the Sultania, the PDF that we're using has it as one bab. So just something to be aware of. So if it's one bab, it would be bab, like I said, this whole thing up until al-qira'atu wal-ardu ala shaykh, ala al-muhaddith. And if it's two babs, it's according to this. Okay. I'm not sure. That's a good question. So see which manuscripts are earlier. So the issue is, so Bukhari taught his book over many years. So when people copied the Sahih from Imam al-Bukhari, um, it's at different points in his life, just like the Muwatta. So one of the things people do when they research is when they have differences in the manuscripts, they'll see which student got this from Bukhari and when. So in there, they would prefer the later ones than the earlier ones because their scholar is doing his research. Later meaning the one who got from Bukhari the latest, because Bukhari is doing his research. What he's teaching at the end of his life is probably his latest opinion. So generally, that's how it is. So and the final student for Bukhari was Firabri, and he's in this chapter in this heading. Firabri was the last student of Bukhari. So most of the manuscripts in the world go back to him. Um, okay, so the main issue is we're going to go by. So Maja fil ilm, that does not say anything. And وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا, we already saw that in the beginning. So the main idea here we're going to look at is al-qira'atu wal-ardu ala al-muhaddithi. Al-qira'atu wal-ardu ala al-muhaddithi. What does that mean? So that's what the chapter is about. Reading?
Is it the same if you read it for him or if it's presented to him? Or I don't know.
Yeah, good. So reading upon ala al-muhaddith.
Uh,
Reading to the muhaddith or presenting to muhaddith. Ard. So there are two words here, al-qira'atu wal-ardu. So the idea here is, so like there are different ways of knowledge. There are two different ways of knowledge. One is you hear from the teacher. Second is you're reading to a teacher. So you hear a book, sama', or you read a book, qira'ah. So in Quran, we learn both ways, but primarily by reading the Quran to a teacher. But you also hear the Quran from teachers. So if you go back to Quran, like you're listening to like the audio of the Quran, that's you hearing the Quran, sama'. But then you also need to recite. So that's a second way of learning the Quran, is by reciting the words in front of a teacher who corrects you. And similarly, it was for books of hadith and books of knowledge, books of fiqh. Scholars would write their books, compile their books, and students would come and read those books to the teachers, or they would uh, learn more about the details, you should go back to Hadith 101. It was, I believe, the fourth or fifth class, where the class was entitled Eight Waves of Receiving Hadith. And that it's not just that was Hadith, but you can extrapolate that to any type of knowledge. And we mentioned the eight ways. The first two were what? Number one was Sama', hearing the Hadith directly from the teacher. And for many, that was the most authentic form of learning. Um, but the second way is this one, al-qira'atu wal-ardu al-muhaddith. The second way is where you read. So they're the same, al-qira'atu wal-ard. It's basically you present the teacher's book to the teacher by reading it, or you say that you read the book, al-qira'a. So that's generally the two primary ways of learning, number one and number two. Um, so in that sense, there was a difference of opinion, like which one is better. And we mentioned last week that people of Kufa and the people of Syria, so more towards the east, they believed that hearing from the teacher was better. And the people of Makkah and Medina, they believe that it's the same thing. It doesn't make any difference whether you hear from a teacher or you read to a teacher. As long as the teacher is listening to you, that's still knowledge. Um, so anyway, this particular chapter is about reading to the teacher. So you can see the purpose of Bukhari having this chapter is to answer this issue. He's responding to those who say or who consider that only the reading of the teacher is valid, not the reading of the student to the teacher. So you see where, it's reading, the teacher reading to the student reading to the teacher. That's the two ways. So what does he do? Um, so what's the difference? So this whole qira'at wal ard is the same thing. It's reading to a teacher, but is there a difference between the word qira and the word ard? So ard is more general. It just means presentation. Um, but in hadith terminology, basically, this is getting very technical, but qira'ah was just reading hadith to the teacher. Arud would be writing down all the hadith of a teacher and then bringing that, comparing it to the teacher's copy. So it was more specific. Arud is like not necessarily reading, but the teacher brings his book in front of you and you bring the book that you bought from the shop or you wrote it down. Now you go page by page and the teacher's sitting there. And you might not necessarily be reading every hadith, but he's there and you're asking him to make sure the copy is sound. So in is basically presenting the information to the teacher or reading the information to the teacher. That's you can say that's what the two refer to. So Bukhari now brings his proof. So right now he just mentions it. So he says Wara al Hasan wa Thawri wa Malik. So Hasan al Basri, Sufyan al Thawri, Malik ibn Anas, they saw al qira'ata jaizatan. They saw that reading was perfectly valid. So that's the first issue he responds to. He says these great early authorities, for them, reading was fully valid. Yani jaiza. Because there was an idea, circulating idea that no, that's not valid. You have to hear from the teacher. And remember, we mentioned Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, his story with Imam Malik. Muhammad ibn al-Hasan is from Kufa, student of Abu Hanifa. He considered real knowledge to be hearing from the teacher. So he made Malik recite the whole Muwatta to him, and Malik didn't always oblige. So it took him 3 years to learn the Muwatta. And he only wrote down what Malik. So this is the title of the chapter, you can say, Al-Qira'atu al-Ardu al-Muhaddith. So point number one, the first information he brings, Ra'a al-Hasan wa Thawri wa Malik al-Qira'atu ja'iza. So three big authorities, they considered it valid. And then he says the second piece of information, واحتج بعضهم في القراءة على العالم بحديث Dimam ibn Sa'laba. So he says, some of them, ba'duhum, they relied for evidence for qira'ata al alim, qira'ati al alim, reading to a it is qala li nabi. He repeats the hadith here. He doesn't bring the whole isnad, but this is the hadith that's under hadathana. Qala li nabi. The Imam, the companion said to the Prophet sallallahu Allahu amarak. Did Allah command you? An nusalliya salawat. To make the salawat. And the Prophet, what did he say? Qala na'am. قال فهذه قراءة على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أخبر ضمام قومه بذلك فأجازوه. So the second piece of information from the hadith. Hadith is about a Bedouin coming to ask the Prophet a number of questions. The Prophet says yes. So he already knew. He just repeats them to the Prophet and he's saying, the Prophet said yes. Then he went back to his people to teach them that. So Imam Bukhari said that's evidence that this person was kind of like reading to the Prophet. Qira'atu ala Nabi. So, and that was valid and there was nothing wrong with that. Okay. So you have point number one, point number two. So when Bukhari wants to prove something, he brings evidence after evidence. So you just have to dissect the evidence to look at it one by one. Now, point number three. What is it? واحتج مالك بالصك يقرأ على القوم فيقولون أشهدنا فلان ويقرأ ذلك قراءة عليهم ويقرأ على المقرئ فيقول القارئ أقرأني فلان. Okay, so this is number three. So Imam Malik relied upon um, this idea called sak. Sak is a document. So it says here that Imam Malik relied on documents that were read to people, like different decrees and things like that. يقرأ على القوم فيقولون أشهدنا. They read to the people and the people bore witness. They said, we bear witness to that. What's the translate? Who has sunnah.com? How do they translate it? I don't have it in front of me. And who has right. Okay. Okay, good. Yeah. So there you go. So ashhadana fulanun. So basically, Malik relied on the argument that when a document is brought towards the people, it could be a tax document, it could be a decree. It's read to the people, and everyone, like in the old villages, like even in Roman like culture, you had the people come with the royal decrees in the village and say, "Hear ye, hear ye." Everyone gets together, and they read the document, and then that announces to the people certain things, and that's a form of bearing witness and transmitting something. So he says this is exactly like reading to a teacher, when the teacher says, "Ashhadana aqra'ani fulan." So okay, so that's number three. And then his fourth piece of evidence is a report, like a hadith. So he says, حدثنا محمد بن سلام حدثنا محمد بن الحسن الواسطي عن عوف عن الحسن قال لا بأس بالقراءة على العالم. So this is a statement of who? Al-Hasan. So this is, he brings isnad, a hadith that goes back to Hasan al-Basri. So it's an athar. It's a report from Hasan al-Basri. He says, there is nothing wrong with reciting to a scholar. So, It's similar to evidence number 1. So it's kind of like a repeat. So he brings like a specific report to corroborate that. Okay, that's evidence 4. Evidence 5. وأخبرنا محمد بن يوسف الفرابري وحدثنا محمد بن إسماعيل البخاري قال حدثنا. Yeah, so this is most likely. So why is Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari here? So this is probably the manuscript. So you know this chapter, like there's discrepancies in the way the chapter is constructed. Some saw it as 2, some saw it as 1. So it all goes back to like the students that are writing the manuscript. So every student is writing a manuscript, not just writing the Sahih, he's writing his connection to the Sahih. So often you'll find like Bukhari's name there because that's the way the student was reading the manuscript. So that's likely what's happening here. So أخبرنا محمد ibn Yusuf al-Firabri. This is from who is Muhammad ibn Yusuf al-Firabri? He was the final student of Bukhari. He's the one who transmitted the Sahih to all of us. All of our versions, most of them, like 90% go through. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair. How are you? 90% go through Yusuf al-Firabri. So this is not Bukhari speaking, akhbarana. So it could be that Bukhari brought the statement, like Firabri brought the statement. Now the person writing the manuscript down, what he's doing is he's taking adding the isnad to that report, or it could be that this is additional. We'll have to review some more commentaries. See, this portion could be like added later on. So anyway, the student is saying Farabri related to me and Bukhari related to me, Farabri's teacher. So they said they report from Ubaidullah bin Musa from Sufyan al-Thawri, who said, إذا قرئ على المحدث فلا بأس أن يقول حدثني. قال وسمع. Okay. So إذا قرئ على المحدث فلا بأس أن يقول حدثني. So Sufyan al-Thawri, his statement is that if you read hadith to a teacher, you can say haddathani for that. Like the teacher reported to me. So haddathani, remember, like for most people, it means like you heard, like it's more clear. But for Sufyan al-Thawri, it's interchangeable. You can say haddathani for even reading, like you didn't hear the teacher, you read to them, you can still use haddathani. So قال وسمعت أبا عاصم يقول عن مالك وسفيان القراءة. This is evidence number 6. Is a statement of Abu Asim from Malik and Sufyan. So statement of Malik and Sufyan. القراءة على العالم وقراءته سواء. Reading. So this is the final piece of evidence. This is the most clear. Reading to a teacher and his reading is the same thing. So in the end, Bukhari is proving what is his point. Like he believes this. Al-qira'atu ala al-alim wal-qira'atuhu sawa. It doesn't matter you read a hadith to a teacher or the teacher reads to you and you hear it from him. They're the same thing. They're qualitatively the same. So it's equally valid. And that's why he has this whole chapter here to prove that point. So the fact he's spending a lot of time means that it was debated. That means people were probably debating this idea and point, and he's trying to settle the issue. Generally, when something's controversial, you speak about it. When something's like obvious, everyone agrees to it, then you don't need to spend a lot of time. So now, what was the previous chapter? The previous chapter was
Raising your voice with it.
raising your voice. Man rafa sawtahu bil ilm. Okay.
What's it? Yeah.
No, after that was
Right. After that, it was the other one. Alam is testing the student.
Oh, okay. The one before that. Okay, the one before that. Yeah. قول المحدث حدثنا أخبرنا أنبأنا. So this whole chapter is about the teacher reading to you. And here, so this is the first part, teacher reading to you. And now the chapter we're studying right now is about the student reading to the teacher. So they're both valid for Imam al-Bukhari. That's the end point here. Okay, so now we're ready for the hadith. Any questions? So we only have one hadith today. I didn't get a chance to move on. I've been very busy. So it's a longer hadith. So let's read this hadith and early. Who wants to read from here? We had an online reader, someone from the audience want to read. Hadathana Abdullah bin Yusuf. Okay, go ahead, sister. Okay, so the isnad comes from Abdullah ibn Yusuf. And this is Abdullah ibn Yusuf at-Tinisi from Egypt. So he's a transmitter of Imam Muwatta's Malik's Muwatta, Imam Malik's Muwatta. And Imam Bukhari prefers to use him to relate the Muwatta. So we talked about him a lot. He died in the year 218. So he was one of the prominent students of Imam Malik, and Bukhari was able to receive the entire Muwatta through him. So this is Abdullah ibn Yusuf. And he relates from who? Who's the next person in the chain? Layth ibn Sa'd. So this is Imam Bukhari's preferred Muwatta student, Malik student. But this hadith is not from the Muwatta. It's not from Malik. So just realize that sometimes you put people in boxes. Abdullah bin Yusuf, the narrator of the Muwatta, but this is not Muwatta hadith. It's not coming from Malik. It's coming from Layth ibn Sa'd. So this is an Egyptian isnad. The Egyptian Qadi. We talked about him a lot. He was a great scholar, contemporary of Imam Malik. He's the one who wrote letters to Imam Malik. And Imam Malik and them had exchanges. He's the one who helped Imam Malik with his daughter's marriage by sending him gifts and things like that. So he was a contemporary and sort of, you can say, academic rival of Imam Malik. So Abdullah bin Yusuf is a student of Malik and also Layth. So he relates to hadith from Layth ibn Sa'd, who died in the year 175. And then Layth ibn Sa'd relates from Sa'id wal Maqburi. So this person we haven't seen before, or maybe we have. I think we have, yes. He did come before. So his name was Abu Sa'd, Sa'id ibn Abi Sa'id, Kaysan. He lived near a graveyard. So people the one from the graveyard. So Al-Maqburi became his title. So it was a cemetery in Medina that he lived near. Baqi, another one. And some reports say Omar appointed him to dig graves. So he was a grave digger. Not only he lived next to it, but he was working there. So he earned the title Al-Maqburi. So he basically migrated to Sham and taught in the Levant, Sham and Lebanon area. So he has 1,100 hadith from Abu Hurairah. But most of the hadith he gets from his father, Abu Sa'id, who was a student of Abu Hurairah also. So he was reliable. So far, it's a strong isnad. And then he relates from Sharik ibn Abdullah. I should be circling these, sorry. All right. Sorry, Abdullah bin Yusuf, Layth, Sa'id, and Sharik ibn Abdullah. Okay. So Sharik ibn Abdullah ibn Abi Namir died 140. He was from Medina. He was al-Qurashi al-Madani. Um, Abi Namr is part of the Sirah. This person, Abi Namr here, was witnessed the battle of Uhud, but on the side of the Mushrikeen. So he was fighting the Muslims in the battle of Uhud, Abi Namr. And later on, he became Muslim. He embraced Islam. So who's Abi Namr compared to Sharik? Yeah, grandfather. Sharik ibn Abdullah ibn Abi Namr. So the transmitter is Sharik. That's just his lineage. Abi Namr is not part of the Hadith. That's just his grandfather. So Sa'id al-Maqburi relates from Sharik, who relates from Annahu Sami'a Anas ibn Malik, who hears Anas ibn Malik. He heard Anas ibn Malik say the following. So Anas ibn Malik, the great companion, he says the following. Sorry. So that's the isnad, the strong isnad. It's a isnad that um, is pretty strong. But then toward the end, after the hadith is over, Imam Bukhari says, Rawahu Musa. Why is this happening? Rawahu Musa wa Ali ibn Abdul Hamid and Sulaiman and Thabit and Anas. And in Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam bihada. So basically, he brings the same hadith to a different isnad. So at the end of the hadith, he brings this isnad. Musa and Ali ibn Abdul Hamid, two of his teachers from Sulaiman, from Thabit, from Anas. So he brings like this is called a supporting isnad for this hadith. So it's the same hadith, but through this isnad. So, um, so who are these individuals? Musa ibn Ismail, that's the first person. Yeah, he died in the year 223. He's one of the 20. Who are the 20? The 20 prolific teachers of Bukhari from whom he has more than 100 reports. So Musa ibn Ismail, one of his strong teachers. He's from Egypt as well.
Oh,
So this is not basically like it started in Medina but settled in Egypt. And then when all the people wrote the hadith down, they got it from Egyptian scholars. So Musa, and then Ali ibn Abdul Hamid is the second teacher of Bukhari. So he died in the year 222. He was one of the reliable teachers of Bukhari. Abu Hatim al-Razi said he was thiqah, and Bukhari sometimes uses him in his mu'allaq reports or supporting reports. An Sulaiman ibn Mughira was a scholar of Basra, and he died in the year 165. Um, so he relates from Thabit al-Bunani from Anas ibn Malik. So Sulaiman ibn Mughira relates from Thabit al-Bunani, who died in the year 123. Um, and he has a long, extensive biography. He was one of the strong students of Anas ibn Malik. He was a worshipper, great Zahid of Basra, and also hadith expert. Also, he was one of the preachers, Qusas. But he's one of the few preachers that was known to be accurate in hadith and not exaggerate in his reports. So I don't think we need to go into like detailed biographies of supporting isnads. We did the biographies of the beginning. So why does Bukhari bring his supporting isnad? Is that his practice? No. Generally, it's not his practice to do that. He does that sometimes when there's a doubt about hadith or the isnad is not strong enough. So here, this particular hadith comes through like different versions. There's a lot of debate among hadith experts. Um, who's the right person that narrated this? Is it Abu Hurairah or Anas? Also, the intermediaries are different. So because there's like a debate over this hadith and it was debated in hadith circles. So when Bukhari brings a hadith, he's certain that it's sound. But then to prove his point, he brings supporting isnads to bolster the strength. So that means whenever you see an isnad after the hadith, that means there is some problem or potential problem in the hadith that Bukhari is trying to prove. or bring support for. Okay. Okay, now the hadith itself. So Anas ibn Malik says, بينما نحن جلوس مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في المسجد. One day we were sitting with the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم in the masjid. دخل رجل على جمل. So a man came on a camel into the masjid. He was riding his camel, he came into the masjid. فأناخه في المسجد ثم عقله. فأناخه في المسجد ثم عقله. So he basically brought his camel down in the masjid and he tied him. Anachahu fil masjid brought. That's what a camel is huge. To get off a camel, like you have to make the camel kneel in order to tie him down. So he made the camel kneel and sit down, and he tied him to the masjid. Aqalahu. Thumma qala lahum, and he said to the people who were sitting there, Ayyukum Muhammad. Which one of you is Muhammad? وَالنَّبِيُّ مُتَّكِئٌ بَيْنَ ظَهْرَانَيْهِمْ. While the Prophet was sitting among them, like in the middle. بَيْنَ ظَهْرَانَيْهِمْ. So, who was this person? He must have been Arabi, like the Bedouins, because they had these kind of manners. Um, so they were rough and tough. They had these rough type of manners. So he walks in, puts his camel down, and he just comes, Ayyukum Muhammad. Which one of you is Muhammad? So imagine that's a scene. That's like a quite a. So that's how the Bedouins were, and it was interesting. These hadith are so interesting. The ones that have the Bedouins in there. So فقلنا هذا الرجل الأبيض المتكئ. So we said to him, this rajul who is أبيض متكئ. What does that mean? He's white, meaning he was paler. This white man sitting down. That's the translation, but it means that he was, lighter skin and like that's so it's not a judgment. Like now in our times, like everything is like has so much like meaning behind it and context. In those times, people were descriptive. Arabic was a descriptive language. People used to describe things. So it doesn't mean anything beyond that. There's nothing beyond that. So this person, هذا الرجل الأبيض المتكئ, who's sitting down or reclining. Sitting down is more than sitting down. It's probably reclining. It looks like they were probably relaxed.
Relax, yeah.
Yeah, because متكئ بين ظهرانيهم. They're all sitting down, just
chilling out.
Yeah. Yes. So Jazakallah khair. So they're all sitting down, reclining, and they said, this white man sitting down. فقال له الرجل ابن عبد المطلب. So this man, he turned to him and said, Oh, Ibn Abd al-Muttalib. فقال له النبي صلى الله عليه فقال الرجل للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إني سائلك فمشدد عليك في المسألة فلا تجد علي في نفسك. He said, I am going to ask you some things. And he was so serious. So you could just imagine, he was probably like an intimidating, tall person, comes on a camel, puts his camel down. Which one of you is Muhammad? And then he says, Inni sa'iluka, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'm going to be slightly firm in those questions. So don't mind me. فَلَا تَجِدْ عَلَيَّ فِي نَفْسِكَ. فَقَالَ سَلْ عَمَّا بَدَالَكَ. The Prophet says, Sal amma badalak. Ask whatever comes to you, whatever you wish. فقال. So he asked a series of questions. أسألك بربك ورب من قبلك. I ask you by your Lord and by the Lord of those before you. الله أرسلك إلى الناس كلهم. So this is Allah. In the Quran, Allah is the word. When you ask a question, you put Hamza before it, istifham. So it becomes Allah. That's tajweed, if you remember our tajweed classes from back in the days. Allah has two Hamzas, and the Arabs hated Hamza. Allah was very harsh for them to pronounce. Allah. That's how you say it. Allah. So they would convert it into a mud that would be easier to pronounce. So they would say Allah. And in Tajweed, it's 6. This is the longest mud there is.
The longest mid. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why we say Allahu. Um, so so he said, so his question was, I ask you by your Lord, by the Lord of um, those before you, did Allah, Allahu arsalaka ila nasi kullihim? I'll circle the questions. First question, did Allah send you to all human beings? Is Allah the one that sent you to all human beings? So, فَقَالَ اللَّهُمَّ نَعَمْ. The Prophet said, yes, certainly so. Question number 2. أنشدك بالله الله أمرك أن نصلي الصلوات الخمس في اليوم والليلة. I'll circle from here. How did they translate Anshuduk Allah in Sunnah.com? Just curious.
Bear witness. Testify like that.
Yeah, but I'm just curious how they translated it.
Huh.
I ask you by Allah. Yeah, by Allah. No, not by Allah. Yes, this one. Anshuduka billah. Anshuduka billah.
Must be
I
testify.
ask you by Allah. So, yeah, that's a. So, anshuduka billahi. So, I ask you by Allah. So, it's basically a synonym of as'aluka bi rabbik. Anshuduka billah. Mm-hmm. Is it used in Arabic today? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So Anshuduka has a sense of a louder voice because nasheed are those songs and those. So nasheed is like you sing something loud. So Anshuduka billahi, that the sense is in the same word. So he asked again. The second question is, did Allah command you? And he got all the rundown of Islam. Now he just wants to confirm it. So he comes to the Prophet. He just wants to see with his own eyes, like the Prophet, and he wants to hear from his mouth, and he wants to confirm this really is from Allah. So that's probably what he was doing because he has the answers and he's just asking for confirmation. So he says, did Allah give 5 prayers for the day and the night? Prophet said, Allahumma na'am. And then question number 3, Anshuduka billahi, Allahu amaraka an nasuma hadha ash-shahri min as-sanati. Is Allah the one who commanded you to fast in this month of the year? قال اللهم نعم. قال أنشدك بالله على فقرائنا. Is Allah the one who commanded you to take the sadaqah from our rich folks and divide it among the poor folks? That's sadaqah or zakah. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم نعم. He said اللهم نعم. So how many questions? You have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. These are your pillars of Islam. The fara'id, the obligations. Which one is missing? Hajj. So the Hajj is missing. So it could be many reasons for it. It could be that the transmitter forgot. Or so this incident most likely happened in the 9th year of the Hijrah after Hudaybiyah. So Mecca didn't belong to the Muslims yet. So although it was a pillar, it wasn't really part of the discourse yet. So maybe that was why it was left out. So anyway, the man says at the end, قال الرجل, آمنت بما جئت به وأنا رسول من ورائي من قومي وأنا ضمام ibn ثعلبة أخو بني سعد ibn Bakr. So he said, I believe, I testify, I believe in what you have come with, and I am a messenger to those behind me that I leave behind from my people. Meaning he came on their behalf. So he came to embrace Islam on their behalf. He's a leader. He wanted to see the Prophet himself with his own eyes and hear with his own ears. And he said, he announced his name. I'm Dimam ibn Tha'laba. I'm the brother of Bani Sa'ad ibn Bakr. So this is the hadith. Um, so it's a famous hadith. It comes in other versions. But what's the point? What's the title of the chapter? Bukhari is proving what? The idea of reading to a teacher that is perfectly valid. And look at how he brings this hadith. This is hadith is reading to the teacher, to the Prophet ﷺ. So he's the one who spelled out the details of the Islamic teachings. The Prophet just said, Naam. So look how Bukhari brings evidence to prove certain point. The debate is about reading a book of hadith to a teacher. Bukhari brings a hadith. Look, a Bedouin came, asked Islamic teachings to the Prophet. He said, Naam. And he went back to his people and taught that. The Prophet didn't say, wait up, now you need to hear it from us, or here you need it written down. He let him go back and teach his people. So that means reading information to a teacher is fully valid. That's the lesson here. So that's all I have today. What are some of the let's think about lessons. So every at the end of every hadith we brainstorm. Now the matan itself, what are lessons and what are gems coming from this hadith? Aside from the obvious was you're allowed to read to a teacher, okay. But that's not what the hadith is about, but that it proves that. But what other things? Good. Very good. So I like that. The idea of following up on information. Sometimes you need to follow up on information, go to the source. Sometimes we hear things and it's useful to go to the source to corroborate them, make sure there's no mistakes, or just to increase your certainty, your iman in them. That's good. What else? What about look at the casual life of the Prophet ﷺ, how beautiful that is, sitting with his companions, reclining in the masjid. Like an average day, this man comes in and they're just sitting. So uh, look at the beautiful manners and the informality between the companions and the Prophet. Oh, yeah, excellent. The Prophet was among the people, one of the people, unrecognizable. How many people recognize him? But like if someone saw him for the first time, they wouldn't know. So what about the people that say there's light used to emanate from his face and a cloud over his head all the time? So then wouldn't that person have known if that was the case? A lot of people, a lot of Muslim sects, they say that. What else? Yes. Patience with different types of people. That's very important for a teacher and a dari. Yeah. Yeah, so it could come across as rude to some people. He wasn't intending to be rude. That's just how so that's important to understand because being rude is relative. It's cultural. Like in some cultures it's very rude to do certain things, other cultures makes no difference. So here the Bedouin, it's this would be rude for like an Urdu speaking audience. It would be blasphemy, not just rude. So in Urdu, if you use the wrong word, my God, it is like the worst insult in the world. even though the meaning is the same. So like the Indian culture is so built on formalities and intricacies. If you violate any of that adab, it is the end of the world. It's Yawm al-Qiyamah. In your culture is less. Like your food is less spicy. Our food is has more intricacies, more sophistication. Yes. Hmm. Yeah. Mhm. So for the teacher, the lesson here, the teacher needs to recognize that they can't treat everyone alike. They can't like you have to know what's an insult, what's being rude, and what's like just like culture. So one thing is growing up here, coming from India and Pakistan here, um, like we speak in an American way. So like our parents always called us rude. Like we were always castigated. We never met half the time or most of the time. We have no idea what happened. Why are we being yelled at? Like so because like it's just they extrapolate that onto another culture and it doesn't work with English. So I have many childhood trauma stories about that. So it is you're not intending to be. You're just translating English into Urdu and it comes out as like an insult. So yeah, you need to be aware of the context. Prophet did not take him to task. It actually for the companions it would have been rude. Companions to say Ya Muhammad. You think Anas ibn Malik would ever say Ya Muhammad? No. But the Prophet recognized this is how these people speak. And it's nothing to be offended about. That's just their culture. So had that person lived among them for an extended period of time, then they would have adjusted to their like norms. But it's not necessarily a problem. So that's the issue here. Ayyukum Muhammad. Yeah. Oh yeah, this statement is beautiful. So he was so easy with the people. Ask me whatever comes to me. Oh yeah. So you think the prophet lenient thing made him more lenient? Could be. Interesting. Yes. Could be. Because these rough people, if you're rough with them, they get rougher. But if you're soft with them, then they calm down. So you have to know how to calm down certain people that are that type. Okay, that's good. I didn't think about that. Like pleading. Okay. Mm. Like really asking, like pleading. Mm. Subhanallah. And then the five pillars. How about the five pillars? The most important things, the priorities in the deen should always be the basics, not the complicated stuff, the basics. Salah, zakat, hajj, som, that should always be the priority. And that's what everything should be built upon. Some people focus on such minute things and like, you know, where's the aqidah here? Nowhere, right? Like maybe is Allah the one who sent you? Just some simple aqidah. Allah is the one who sent you. Okay, khalas. Now salah and som and zakat. There's no what? Yeah, so we talked about that. Like we talked about why that could be. So there's a number of reasons, but a number of possibilities. We don't know. It could be that the Hajj was there and the transmitter didn't mention it. Or it could be that at this point in time, like people weren't making Hajj. So it wasn't being like taught that much. No, yeah, Hajj is part of the landscape for sure. But if you know the Sira, what happened is the Muslims prevented from going there. And during Hudaybiyah, which was like I think the sixth year, when was Hudaybiyah? They tried to go, they were prevented. So they made them sign a treaty, you will not come here. So there was a 10-year truce until the next year. So they were delayed by so they didn't have access. The mushrikeen were really trying to deny access. That's why there so many verses in the Quran was saddun an sabilillah. Like they were preventing people from coming to the house of Allah. They were using their position to prevent access. And so the Muslims did not have access until the last year, Hajjatul Wada. Well, until Fath Makkah. What year was the Fath? Like that was eight or nine? Eight. So so the eighth year was Fath Makkah. So then people started making Hajj and Umrah. Before that, it wasn't like they were enemies. That's enemy territory. So Muslims couldn't really go there easily. Okay, anything else? Mm. It could be. It looks like. Mm, hmm And announced like who he's related to. And he announced that he is the acting on behalf of his people. Ana Rasulu min warai, min qawmi. So he was the leader of his people, representing them, and he formally announced his name. So it looked like, so most like he was formally bringing his people within the fold and announcing that in front of everybody. Now, my entire tribe is who I am. We are with you, and I speak on their behalf. So it's like a formal thing. Yeah. Yeah, I believe it's different. Because yeah, because that one is like he's more anonymous and the question's slightly different. It's the same pillars, but he swore by Allah he will not do more. This is different content. Allahu Alam, I believe is different. Is it the same? Allahu Alam. Did you read that anywhere? It could be the someone tell Nadeem. That's his assignment. He looked up the last assignment, by the way, and he gave me some like so the these were authentic, but so is this so quite so okay, let's make this the question for Nadeem Ramjan if you're online. It's yeah. So the details look so okay, there's three. So I want to know That hadith where the Bedouin said, "I won't do any more than that," is that the same? And what about the second one who didn't tie his camel? And the Prophet said, "Go back and tie your camel." Yeah, that was also a Bedouin that came to the masjid. So is that the same hadith? Doesn't look like, but he said, "By the one who said you, who sent you with the truth, I shall do no more and no less." Oh, Prophet said, okay. Please. So he is including that as the same hadith in Fath al-Bari? Okay. Wow. Okay. So it seems like it's the same hadith then. But we need to dig deeper. It could be that it may not be, but sometimes it's like different reports, and some scholars consider them the same incident, others do not. But and the other one, Talha, from the Prophet, Talha. Okay. It seems like it is pointing to the same. Interesting. So if it's in Bukhari and Muslim, then we just need to look up that hadith in Bukhari and read the commentary and to see and to look at it in detail. I wish I had time to look at that, inshallah. Like the first analysis, remember I said the first analysis is like the same hadith, look at within Bukhari, the same hadith or similar hadith, read them, put them side by side, try to compare and learn, is it the same or different? And then look at other books, starting with Muslim and others. And that's how you learn a lot. Ali? Rawahu Musa? No, wa Ali. Wa Ali ibn. Oh, 20, oh, 20, yeah. So 20 is, among the teachers of Bukhari, there are 20 mukthirun. Mukthirun. Mukthirun means Bukhari takes many hadith from them. So there's only 20 teachers of Bukhari that he gets half of his book from. And then the rest of the teachers are in the other half. So these 20 teachers, he relates more than 100 times each. No one else he has more than 100. So these are the 20 common teachers or prolific teachers of Bukhari. Musa. Okay. Anyone online have a question? Okay, that's all I have. Yeah, Junaid.
Like one thing I guess, like observing is when a man, someone invests in the Prophet ﷺ, all the Sahaba are there, but no one interrupts. But they have, like in the Hadith, Umar radiallahu anhu says that like like he asks the question, the answer says, and you have spoken the truth, for example, right? And everyone is there, but like no one is commenting. They have their own thoughts about it.
Mm-hmm.
Is saying anything. So it's like very interesting how everyone's observing it.
Yeah, so from that, so many of these interactions, the rest of the companions just watching silently. So what are the reasons for that? So one is adab, so it tells you the adab, like so a lot of the companions, they were afraid to ask questions again and again. They didn't want to bother the Prophet. And then they had this adab about them. Plus they know the answers and they just like interacting and learning more. So they had this heba, like this reverence for the Prophet. So that's why there's a hadith, I forget where, is the majalis of the Sahaba sitting with the Prophet. Somebody described them as the birds would come land on them, كَأَنَّ عَلَى رُؤُوسِهِمُ الطَّيْرُ. So they were so still, such heba for the Prophet, so silent, just listening, learning, that birds could sometimes come and land thinking they're pillars. So that's very different from the Bedouins. So that's interesting. All the hadith you find that. Hadith of Jibreel, you find that. Here you find that. And many other hadith, even in the beginning of the chapter, they're talking to each other. What did the Prophet mean? But they're afraid to talk in front of the Prophet. So that's a different type of adab and respect. And what this man shows is a different type from a different culture. And he's also respectful, but in his way, it comes across very different. Yeah, not afraid in like like khashya of love. That's based on love for surely. Yeah, surely based on love. Yeah, two snuds. So Bukhari has now two. First one is Abdullah bin Yusuf, Layth. Sorry, okay, that's one isnad. Second isnad is Musa from Sulaiman. An Sulaiman from Thabit from Anas. Wa means it's Ataf ala Musa. There's two different teachers. So that's two isnads. Hmm. Well, the main isnad, al asl huwa in the beginning. This is like shahid. This is so. But these are two. Yes. So now total you have three. Yeah. And Suleiman. Yes. Yes. So Bukhari from Musa from Suleiman. Bukhari from Ali from Suleiman from Thabit. What chapter is it? Kitabul Iman. Okay, yeah, we did Kitabul Iman already. I just need to pull up my. Okay. But then at that time, we probably weren't discussing this, so we wouldn't really have discussed this hadith. Is it the same or not? So 46. 46 by the numbering of Sunnah.com. Okay. What do the details look like?
The man came after came to Allah's messenger on and he came with a loud voice. You could understand him until he came here, and then he asked like similar questions.
And what's the questions? Like, how do you ask the questions?
You have to offer prayers perfectly 5 times in a day and night, 24 hours. The man asked, "Is there any more praying?" The prophet responds, "No, but if you want to offer the nawafil prayers, then
Mm-hmm.
Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that you have to observe fast during the month of Ramadan."
Mm-hmm.
Man asks, is there any more fasting? The prophet responds, "No, but if you want to observe the nawafil fast." Then Allah's Messenger further said to him, "You have to pay zakat." The man asked, "Is there any thing other than zakat for me to pay?" Allah, I will neither do less nor more than this.
Mm-hmm.
Allah's Messenger said, if what he said is true, then he will be successful, that he will get Jannah.
Yeah, so it's not entirely different. It's from Ismail ibn Abi Uwais, the nephew of Malik, from Talha ibn Ubaidullah, like Tanweer said, is a companion. So it's a different companion, but it could be they saw things differently or heard remember differently. So I'm still not fully convinced it's the same. You know, you know, it looks pretty different enough to be a different incident, but Allahu Alam. Nadeem Ramjan. Just okay. Jazakallahu khairun hadha wa sallallahu wa sallama ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام.
السلام ورحمة الله.